when we think about capable independence is how can we have service members take ownership of the program and continue to get from point A to point B in a program in the absence of a coach, right? And if we look at this from an interdisciplinary perspective, I describe it as this: if you engage with our strength and conditioning coach, you'll know how to modify your training plan, reach your training goals, or execute your training plan in a safe manner that drives adaptation. You'll be able to fuel for performance, fuel for recovery, and you'll hopefully be able to maintain, joint range of motion and tissue quality to mitigate injury risk.
Welcome to the Winning Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Schwartzman. I'm a family man, a coach, a wannabe athlete. After earning 3 master's degrees and countless certifications, I've decided that podcasting is how I'm going to continue my education in all things wellness, longevity, and performance. Join me to learn along. I'm in your head. I'm in your ears, huh?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now I got you. All right. Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, man. Good to see you.
Likewise, man. I'm glad this worked out. I know there was a lot of back and forth, so I really appreciate your patience.
Yeah, I don't know. People will just leave us alone. Let us do our thing. So
yeah.
Are you still stateside right now? And then you get on flight tonight?
Yeah, we just finished our 3-day residency at Creighton, and it's been a great three days, really nice, and it just literally just finished. So
what exactly does that? Who's we, and what do you do in a residency? What does that mean?
So I started an interdisciplinary leadership doctorate at Creighton University, and at the end of the first term, they require us to come to campus and spend time with our cohort and go over kind of the ins and outs of the program, ask Q&A, and it gives us a time to connect with our fellow students, which has been really good. A lot of good idea exchange and conversations, and since the program's all online, it's really finally nice to get some human connection and meet the people that you've been working with and responding to over the past 8 weeks. So it's been a lot of value add.
Yeah. No more discussion boards, or discussion boards pretty popular over there?
Yeah, so we have discussion boards. We have to post every Sunday, and then we're required to do 2 responses by Wednesday every week. So it's actually, I feel like the last time I did discussion boards was a long time ago, but I do find these discussion boards, I feel really, really privileged. I'm with a really smart bunch of people, so I get to read a bunch of smart things
Yeah.
every week, and then really get challenged to respond to those smart things. So yeah, I've actually enjoyed the discussion posts more than I would have thought originally.
Nice. I know at times you've even had your leadership model drawn out, so I don't know if that has carried on or anything like that.
It's really funny you should say that. So we actually had to, in light or in line with your model, kind of what you remembered from that. I actually did a small presentation here, and I drew for it. I drew up a model of all the concepts that we've covered over the term, and my goal was to basically create a shared mental model about how knowledge transfer or idea transfer occurs, and how that, I actually called it the interdisciplinary thought and leadership integration model.
Yeah, you did.
Nice. Try to call it something fancy.
Yeah.
So so that's the latest and greatest I've been working on. I actually, in order to understand the concepts that we were talking about, that's how I learned and drew it out. So that's the one model I have handy, which I thought I remember you saying you try to use this podcast to impart certain things with your students. I don't know if that would be of interest to you, but that's the latest and greatest thing that I drew up.
Did you hit him with that whiteboard flip?
I did. I told them
Yes.
it didn't flip, but I made the class get around the whiteboard and I drew it up old school style with the dry erase markers and the whole nine.
Yeah. Yeah. Coaching them up.
That's exactly right. And they were like, it's a master's class, and I was like, listen, this isn't a master's class. This is a chalk talk, and let's go ahead and map out some of these ideas so we're all on the same page here. And you know, just did it old school, weight room style.
Man, they're some lucky people
I appreciate that. Yeah, it was
sitting
fun.
there. Nice. And then why the doctorate? How does that fit into the master plan?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I wish I had a concrete answer for you. I think my passion has always been, or a passion of mine has been in leadership, human behavior, organizational systems and processes. And since considering how much I read, I figured I wanted to do something a little bit more structured. That was number one. But also, I feel like I want to expand my professional skill set to provide a wider range of opportunity for me that just expands beyond the strength and conditioning realm. And my hope is that I can acquire those skills within the doctor program. In particular, EDD versus PhD as you become an action researcher. So the idea is very similar to what we do in strength and conditioning, right? We assess, we profile, prescribe, and monitor. And I feel like amplifying those skills is going to occur as a byproduct of this journey, which I can then apply in different settings.
And then and I can edit stuff out. So um, talk about what you now over email. I think you said you were worried about like talking about your population a little bit.
Yeah, without getting too much detail, I mean, I can talk about the program. I can talk about POTIF. Um, I'm not worried about it. We can just run with it, and then if there's anything, then I'm like, hey, maybe we want to cut that a little bit. We can talk in the aftermath. But actually, it's good we're doing this now because I've had plenty of opportunity to to kind of talk about some of the stuff this weekend.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh okay.
I've kind of been able to explain what it is that I do and where I work. Um, that's not too revealing or in any way um, outside of any sort of security regulations.
Nice. So if you want to get into maybe like a rundown of your career and then where you're at now, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So, I was in the military for 4 years. I served in the Marine Corps. And then when I came out in 2006, I returned to New York and I started my undergrad at Queens College, where I was studying nutrition and exercise science. Through that time there, I was doing personal training. Now, through my experience in the military, I knew I liked teaching and I liked training. So I kind of went on this strength and conditioning journey, or I knew that that was the trajectory, probably before I even knew that the profession of strength and conditioning existed. And while I was in New York, my final year, I did an internship at Fordham University, and then from there, was able to get a graduate assistant position at Lindenwood University, where I was a strength and conditioning graduate strength and conditioning coach for basketball, volleyball, and swimming. Did my master's in human performance there, and then um, had my first job after my master's was at the Olympic Training Center, where I worked with the combat and acrobat sports for Team USA. And in 2016, I had the opportunity to go to Naval Special Warfare (NSW) in Virginia and work as part of the Preservation and Force and Family program, which I did for 4 years before moving on to Special Operations Command Africa in Stuttgart, Germany, where I'm now the Human Performance Advisor um, for the physical performance domain within the POTIF program.
Now, what does that setting look like in Stuttgart?
So the setting of the program, the way that I'm interpreting your question is like how does the program work and the components of it.
You could talk about facilities. You could talk about maybe like the performance unit of who's taking care of uh, the population.
Yeah, so within context, the POTIF program consists of 5 domains: spiritual, social, psychological, cognitive, and physical performance. And the idea is that interdisciplinary approach focused on human performance optimization for individual service members. And the idea is that service members will engage within these domains relative to their particular, I guess, problem sets. And that is essentially their unique performance journey. Now, the way that we've had it set up, we were very fortunate in terms of where we've ended up in facilities, because we didn't really have the infrastructure when I first started there. But currently we have a very nice strength and conditioning facility that's adjacent to our sports med facility, which is housed in a structure with all domains present, meaning we're no longer distributed across the entire command, which makes, collaboration and just, I guess, introducing service members to service providers much easier, right? Because there's just less physical barriers towards interaction.
Yeah, that proximity makes such a difference.
It really does. And I would say even upstairs and downstairs is sometimes a barrier, right? Or a wall between 2 places is a barrier.
Yeah.
So when we understand that concept, now think about that, like when we have buildings that are separated by, 400 to 600 meters, like you're never going to see your colleagues. So being able to interact and you run into each other so much that, idea exchange happens by default. So it's certainly a better environment now for us to be working together and work together and share ideas than it was before. So yeah, we're very fortunate.
As you mentioned, like the first floor versus second floor, it gave me fond memories of working with the St. Louis Rams, where the strength coach, he would say, first floor gets, well, we'll say screwed. Is that the sport coaches, the football coaches, and the owners were on the second floor, and there'd be days that they would have like lunch buffets catered upstairs, and they wouldn't even tell the athletic trainers and strength coaches on the first floor, like wouldn't even find out, or like there'd be like free tickets to some show at the Fox or something like that, and they just like they weren't close enough in proximity, and they would just get left out. So and then
Yeah, it's
just
amazing, right? Like how we gravitate. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah, I was just saying, and then all along with decisions regarding the athletes and the population and just the job. Yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing, right? How just us as humans kind of tend to gravitate or naturally like form our own groups just based off of who's close to us. And we can see it happen in so many different ways. But yeah, I totally get what you're talking about. Absolutely. That those physical barriers can by default or by accident create that.
and then I don't want to seem like I'm cool enough to know what POTIF stands for. What is that?
It's the Preservation of Force and Family program.
Social force and family. And then how similar is the care these soldiers are receiving compared to when you were in your Marine stint?
Well, the program didn't exist when I was in the service. So I think that's why it's really important that this program does exist. is because these types of services just weren't available. And we have to look at it, in my opinion, in terms of context to the times. GWAT, right? Global War on Terror was a 20-year conflict where, American service members were engaged in combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, with that high op tempo comes comes a lot of, I would say, a lot of issues, right? A lot of stressors, combat injuries, whether they're physical or emotional or mental. So having the infrastructure to support service members to either, you know, get in the fight, be successful, get back into the fight if hurt, or readjust back to society and their friends and family, you know, services need to be there. And it wasn't until 2012 till this program was created and that infrastructure existed. Prior to that, it wasn't there, and with that came a lot of issues, I think.
Speaking, you've talked a little bit about the issues that maybe those you're serving are going through. And I guess for them, it could be anything from a hamstring strain to their home life issues. But for your group that you're working with now, what do you kind of look at for like KPIs for success and maybe even longevity?
Yeah, so we have four measures of effectiveness, right? We want to increase performance or optimize performance, improve quality of life, decrease pain, and well, I used to call it build capable independence, but now I think probably better terminology around that is longevity. So how we've looked at measuring performance, very simple: aerobic capacity, strength, body composition. We've been able to show that interactions with service providers significantly improve body composition and performance scores. And, excuse me, we've also been able to show that participation in our program decreases pain and improves quality of life. And then this was kind of a side project that we did for 2 years. And it's not necessarily like the most accurate way to evaluate this, but when we think about capable independence is how can we have service members take ownership of the program and continue to get from point A to point B in a program in the absence of a coach, right? And if we look at this from an interdisciplinary perspective, I describe it as this: if you engage with our strength and conditioning coach, you'll know how to modify your training plan, reach your training goals, or execute your training plan in a safe manner that drives adaptation. You'll be able to fuel for performance, fuel for recovery, and you'll hopefully be able to maintain, joint range of motion and tissue quality to mitigate injury risk. And what we end up doing is just simply seeing how many people were logging on to our distance coaching app and track that over a 2-year period. Obviously we can't tell if they're just logging in or doing the program or if they're or not. But we did see a significant increase from year 1 to year 2. Now that wasn't a required metric, so it was also a time investment. So we opted not to collect that anymore. But my point is, in terms of looking at longevity, we do know that things like VO2 max and strength, these are health span indicators, right? We want to be able to beat the aging curve over time, right? So that's why I think after a point in time, especially with our service members, maintenance is a goal. And if these individuals are getting older and maintaining, that's great. How do you do that? You participate in training plan. So that was the way that we were able to at least look at that KPI or measure of effectiveness through, the lens or the resource that we had.
And just a side note, it's kind of been a something we've been playing around with on campus here is we'll take some true VO2 max tests using a regulator and sensors, and then we'll do like a side correlated test. So just out of like very top of mind, what's your protocol for your VO2 max testing?
We don't have, I mean, so we don't have gas exchange or anything like that. We've done anywhere from beep tests to right now we do a 2,000-meter row for time to account for our aerobic capacity assessment requirement. And it has more to do so with feasibility than anything else.
Yeah. How do the guys do with that? Is your 2,000-meter row time up on a board for like competition, a little bit of rivalry, or?
So we don't have enough population specific data on our 2,000-meter row because we just started doing that this year. So no, we don't have those scores posted anywhere. But what we've done with our body composition and 2-mile run times, deadlifts, and isometric thigh pull is we've basically created percentiles, and we have a population specific distribution, and we understand where our lower percentile ranking is and our higher percentile rankings are, where those cutoff points are. So our point is that we want to understand where you stand in space, but we're interested in comparing you to you over time.
Yeah.
And we have to compare it to population specific data because it just wouldn't make any sense to compare our population to a component or to a sports team, for example.
And then how do you determine what you say helping out their goals? You talked about helping out their goals earlier. Are their goals more determined by, hey, they walk in and their biceps aren't as big as they used to be and they want to pump those back up, or is it their professional coaches looking at some of their data over the last couple of years? How do you identify their goals for like the next 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes more towards, so the goals can be wide ranging in this population from, like you said, to being, hey, I want aesthetics. I want to, run a marathon. And I think to be able to achieve those, they happen also as a byproduct of just doing the right thing. So if we can focus on the basics, and we're going to be able to drive performance. But like I preach consistency over intensity, right? Like let's eat better more days than we eat bad. Meaning, I mean that's a math problem, right? We got 7 days in the week. We need to follow sound nutrition 4 out of the 7 minimum. So we can't expect to get our desired outcomes if our behaviors don't match. And sometimes that's probably the easiest way to focus on getting someone towards their goals versus worrying about the 24-inch biceps, for example. But I guess I say that with the caveat of not wanting to be like, no, we don't try to account for the individualism or the desired outcome of what a person comes or what a service member comes to us with. I think our service providers do a great job of doing that. But I think it's more of a conversation in terms of like, what does that actually look like in action? And it's, we want to be flexible in implementation and specific in outcome. And educating someone on the how behind that.
Can you say that again? You said specific and outcome. What was that?
Flexible in implementation, but specific in outcome.
How do you guys arrive at the 2,000-meter row? Why is that the weapon of choice?
Feasibility. You have a number of authorized assessments to select from, and It's the easiest one for us to execute.
Yeah. So I've kind of fallen in love with rowing lately. The last year here or so, it's just I've always been around it, but for some reason this last year I've really started like giving a darn about it. Um, and part of that is that been looking into longevity more over the last few years. For whatever reason, I'm getting older. Everybody else around me is getting older. Um, the concept, I don't know if it's concept two rower or a different kind of rower, but that really stands out to me as something that older athletes find and can dig in deep on rowing. Um,
Hmm.
Getting strong from head to toe, gets your heart rate through the roof, low injury occurrence. It seems like that's like a sweet spot for the aging population to get on and be aggressive on. You don't go so fast to really pull and tweak things, and it just seems like there's something in there that I was missing for years. It's kind of sitting right underneath my nose, and only kind of recently did I start appreciating it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think you hit on a lot of good stuff there, right? It's challenging, it's full body, and it's low risk.
Yeah, there's I keep you can't kind of spend more than a. It seems like I can't kind of look into it for too long without seeing another story about somebody who they didn't exercise their whole life and then they turned like 60 and they started rowing and now they're 75 and their VO2 max is equal to that of like a 40-year-old's or um,
Yeah, it's a great example of beating the aging curve, right? Like I think it's really good. It's like we want to be emotionally older than our chronological age, and we want to be physically younger than our chronological age, right? Like ideally.
yeah, ideally. I could kind of talk shop with you on exercise and the fitness space for quite a while, but I know you're also pretty um, you're heavy in philosophy and experience in leadership, and
Hmm.
so I don't know if you want to shift gears a little bit and
Yeah,
take us
let's do
down
it. Why don't
that lane.
you got? Let's do this. I have an idea. Let's just run with this. All right. You got something. You got a pen and paper. Okay, so we're gonna do something here. I'm gonna give you some of the stuff that I picked up on this, and then we can talk about it in reference to that or piggyback off of it. But this could be some value add for you, for your students as a concept. All right. So basically, what we talked about a range of things this semester, which was good because a lot of these concepts that we know, and yet I don't know if we have shared terminology around them or if they're correct terms. But this semester we talked about things like intellectual humility, we talked about intercultural competence, we talked about interdisciplinary thought, virtues, self-awareness, reflection, and the concepts or components of leadership. And unique individual strength. I would tie that one in there as well. Now, the question for me became is how do I understand this and how do I understand these things working together? And why is this important? Because I can understand concepts abstractly, but all of these things relate to one another and they're interconnected. So for me to understand that, I had to draw it out, right? So what we'll do now is we'll draw out these concepts and we can talk about it. So the first thing is we want to talk about how does an idea enter our consciousness. So if you the first thing you write on your paper and give yourself space, put it in like the left side of it because we're going to draw across horizontally, is we're going to put intellectual humility. So IH. Intellectual humility I'd describe as the door that allows ideas to enter our consciousness. And why? Because we understand that we have the limits of comprehension, right? We know where our boundary of understanding is. And in expressing that, we know that we don't have to be right, and we won't allow our biases to get in the way. So this makes us receptive to outside ideas. Now, as this idea comes in through that door, it has to cross a bridge of intercultural competence. Intercultural competence suggests that we are aware of differences, power structures, the unique perspective of different cultures. So this is important because we want to be able to see through the lens of others. And at this point in time, we can develop our first wave of tension, because this whole process is uncomfortable, right? And tension and discomfort can arise at different places. So as this idea is crossing this bridge, we need to then be reflexive. So reflective practices basically talk about, we think about our thoughts in real time. And when we think about our thoughts in real time, why am I thinking this way? How am I doing it? Now I need to lean into discomfort. I need to capitalize on maybe the turbulence that's happening as a form of discussion. Hopefully that allows that idea to travel further towards our worldview, right? Now, it's really interesting to know that like intercultural competence, reflexivity, and intellectual humility both offer, as buffers, psychological stress, buffers to psychological stress that occur through uncomfortable conversations. But these things take practice and refinement, so we're not really going to be good at it all the time. So as this idea now enters, let's say, call it the final stage, we'll draw a circle or about the end of that line. And in that circle, you're going to write idea, and then give yourself some space. You're going to write WV, worldview. So your worldview is established through the culture, basically, right, that you've grown up in. There's a lot of factors that play into it. Your worldview can change over a lifetime, but your worldview is comprised of multiple worldviews that you've had throughout your life that maybe is shaped where it is that you're looking at the world at from right now. And disciplines, and as we talk about cross-disciplinary collaboration, right, second floor versus first floor, is these individuals you're going to have discipline-specific worldviews. If we want to talk about the relationship to sports performance, which means we have our own communication style, we have our own meaning behind words, we have our own things that we value. So when your worldview bumps into this new idea, you'll hit your second wave of tension, right? So now, while this tension occurs, we need to be mindful of that interdisciplinary thought can be described as the idea of holding two opposing views holding two opposing views simultaneously in your mind without choosing one over the other. Which, right, we're talking about two things can be true simultaneously, which I find super interesting. But we need to take, in my opinion, this isn't the end of it, right? We need to do something with those opposing views. And it's not necessarily one or the other. I want to look at the space in between those. Now, the space in between to hold those two views is, again, second wave of discomfort and tension. Now, I like to think about at this point in time, how we can sabotage ourselves is we can come defensive, we can over-explain, we can justify. Basically, we can move against through our expression of thought or by communicating our worldview instantly because, well, we're trying to be heard. So I like to have a tool in this moment. It's something that you can use in meetings or in conversations when you feel discomfort. And you can ask yourself 3 questions. Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said by me now? And does this need to be said by me at all? And what that does in this moment is it opens our window of tolerance to discomfort. And as we open our window of tolerance, we also open the space between our worldview and the new idea. In that space, we're going to have room for creativity. So now if we zoom in on that space, draw a line outside the box, creativity. Creativity builds imagination. Imagination will form new hope and transformation. hope plus transformation equals new ideas. And now that new idea can't stay in our minds. It has to be communicated back out the world. So we take an arrow from communication and we're going to draw it all the way back down the line towards your your intellectual humility. And we're going to call that outflow, and that's communication, which is a skill that can be essentially trained. Now, this is the model of how the thought travels and then gets recommunicated. But that's not enough. We need to understand that this model is ongoing. So what supports this ongoing process? I think of this in terms of what are the catalysts. So above that circle, we're going to write the word virtues. And then from virtues, what I want you to do is draw a line to the door, intellectual humility, to the bridge, intercultural competence and reflexivity, to interdisciplinary thinking. And on those lines, you can draw the virtues that are important for you: empathy, discipline, temperance, courage, right? Those are probably unique to you. But these are the catalysts that keep this process ongoing, because these virtues are embedded in each of these concepts. Now, how do we train, or how do we amplify, or how do we get in touch with our virtues? Reverse engineering that, we need self-awareness. And how do we cultivate self-awareness? We need reflection. So the interplay between reflection, self-awareness, and virtues is a continuous one that can happen in either direction. So it's not necessarily a circle, clockwise, counterclockwise. I think the interplay is kind of random. But these three components form the pillars of, or let's call these not components, these are the three pillars that actually form, or have the potential to in this context, the basis of our leadership components. And if we look at these as like the scaffolding, right? These pillars, they're holding up these building blocks of leadership. Leadership can be looked at in the lens of what do leaders do, know, or identity. And a lot of times we think about, it's about what, depending on the lens of leadership, what it is that you look at. Is it about their behaviors? Is it about what they know? Or is it actually who they are? And I don't think it's any one of those three. I don't think this is binary. I think it's the fusion of those three together that forms the uniqueness of an individual leadership style. So draw three overlapping circles. So if you, right next to it, feel like you're like almost zooming in. Like if this was a three-dimensional picture, it would be, these components would be on top of those pillars. So you have three overlapping circles. Where that overlaps, just shade in that area. All right. Now, that shaded area is going to represent your life experience. So what you do, what you know, and who you are is fused together through your unique life experience, which essentially gives you your unique strengths. So what it is that you do well, how it is you present to your world. And this to me is the ongoing interconnected cycle of all the concepts that we've talked about, from how we grow in terms of thinking, doing, and being. The end. So there's the latest and greatest model, Mitch. I hope you got something out of it.
I have. I'm sure I've butchered what it's supposed to look like.
Let's take a look at it. Let's see what it looks like. I appreciate you playing along here and doing this. Hold up a little
There's
bit
that,
higher.
and then I was getting into my. I didn't know.
Hold on, can you turn the other one around? Can I see the first one again?
I didn't know if the final. This is definitely.
Oh, that's perfect.
I didn't know if the. I didn't know if the three circles were going to be neighbors and like two, like a Venn diagram there, or if it, I believe it ended up being a 3-part Venn diagram.
Right. Right.
And that's where well, first of all, I love it.
Thank you.
Second of all, and I will pause. I'll pause to say some things you know already. But for anybody listening, Paul and I were GAs. Our time as GAs overlapped in 2013 at Lindenwood University, and going into a staff meeting, Paul had a presentation. He was going to talk about leadership, and I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but he starts with a blank whiteboard. He talks a little bit about his military background, this, that, and the other. I'm kind of hoping for maybe some like military lingo or some slang, and just maybe just tell us what they do over there. And then he sort of just takes a whiteboard and he flips it where he had drawn up a model already, and he proceeds to bring in uh, thoughts and concepts and models from just all four corners of the earth and different things he's read and experienced, things like that, and he blended together. And it was like pivotal for me to sit in a meeting in person with somebody who was taking complex concepts and weaving them together. I had sat in lectures and classes, but I had never been in a professional meeting where somebody was they're being creative with uh, their being creative with their thinking process, and they're sharing it with others. Despite having learned many things for quite a while, it was my first professional meeting where people were kind of like they were creating, and so for me, that was kind of one of my first impressions with Paul. But still doing it, and when I saw him recently, it's one of the first things I ended up talking to him about because it's just it's like a fond memory, and also it planted a seed in my head that like I would like to be able to do that one day, and to just have to blend topics and material together and make things multifactorial and to make it make sense to other people. So I'm still working on it, but hopefully one day I'll get there. What I really like about the end part, um, the the three-way Venn diagram, talking about leadership, what you do, what you know, and who you are. In just a few seconds of hearing that and drawing it out, I started thinking about, okay, who you are. Well, people come from all different backgrounds. They've got different morals, religions, whatever. They've committed different sets of crimes and different sets of like good deeds over their life. But so you can't. It's hard to change that in a vacuum. But what you do, you can change what you do, and what you know, you can go out and learn. And I also like the saying is that you are what you repeatedly do. And so I like the way that all of that just blends together. And so with that in mind, does that mean that anybody, no matter who they are, can become a better leader?
Well, I think it depends on how we define leadership. And I've heard it expressed a few different ways. One way I think that I am reflecting on and that I kind of like is a leader is someone who has the ability to exert influence. And whether we describe that as good or bad, it doesn't matter because it's our choice about how it is that we express our influence, right? And if we also talk about leadership starts with self-leadership, because we all have to lead ourselves in some capacity, that means to me, like by you engaging with yourself, you have the capacity to grow your own leadership ability. And I think we need to move away from the model of leadership as a defining moment, or that leadership is a unique once in a lifetime accomplishment, because and this is these are words that I've gotten from readings, not from because I'm a genius, right? I steal everybody else's ideas that say it far better than I can. But I really like the idea of like leadership is the culmination of our repeated actions over a lifetime, not one defining moment. because 99.9.99999% of us are never going to have this defining moment in our lives, and that's okay. But it's how it is that we show up over our lifetime that I think is going to make the difference, and that is a ongoing process that is going to be marked with highs and lows. That is essentially the human experience, and it's never going to be perfect, and we're never going to arrive. So engaging with that thought for me is helpful. And then it goes back to your point. It goes back to saying it's like, how do we respond to our circumstances? Because our response is up to us, and circumstances aren't.
Building out this model, I believe you said that you've been sharing it with your fellow doctoral candidates. How about the servicemen? Do you engage in this conversation with them, or with other coaches? Is it still something that's sitting in your head and something that are you still hold on, let me see if I can find a bit of your, is this still part of the creativity and imagination portion of your process, or have you started implementing this with others?
No, I mean, I think this was just how I understood the material that I was exposed to over the past 8 weeks, right? This is how I had to conceptualize it. But I think what I am learning about myself is that I am more of a visual learner, and I need to mind map. I need to map things out, and I operate really well off of frameworks. So when it comes to program development, systems and processes, even ideas, I need to sketch those out. And I don't know what the end product is going to look like, but just for engaging with the thoughts differently, writing, drawing, thinking, contemplating, repeating, something begins to emerge and a construct begins to appear. And then through that, depending on the context, we have our different framework or different model. So while I haven't engaged with like this particular model with anybody till right now and yesterday's period, over like a 5-minute quick intro class, I haven't really shared this idea with anybody. But the process of idea formation for me, I think, has been quite consistent. Does that answer your question?
It does. No, understanding that this model is a little bit maybe fresher, or maybe it models things that you've believed for a long time, but you just didn't have, but now you found a new way to express them, perhaps. Um, how do you feel like, is this something you're going to take and teach to other people, or is it something that just you're going to internalize to make yourself a better leader?
Yeah, I have no idea. I do like the concept of understanding that leadership is doing, knowing, and being. I really like sitting with that idea. I like understanding that life experiences is really going to have a huge impact on what it is that we do, what it is that we know, and how it is that we're going to be. I do like understanding that, like, so when I was reading all of these papers, and this makes so much sense, is that self-awareness was the one variable that came up almost across every concept. So the importance of self-awareness to execute anything from humility to cultural competence to interdisciplinary thinking, all of it requires self-awareness. And the importance of like emotional regulation. People talk about EQ now more than they do IQ. How do we do that? First, it starts with us. It starts with being self-aware. And how can we improve our ability to be self-aware? And that goes back to reflection. And what's interesting when I see the connection to sports performance is we talk about things like meditation and journaling, and the hot topic right now is like mindfulness. And okay, what we're talking about is just being aware. And we're using a lot of different words to essentially talk about the same thing. And what this is something that I find really interesting, and what I found really gratifying about this class, and this is a very long-winded answer to your question, is what it's helped for me is just refine concepts that I've been aware of and see the interconnectedness of those concepts. And I'd use an example like when we talk about philosophy, if I'm reading the Tao Te Ching, Stoic philosophy, or a history of, Jesuit roles in the world, we're talking about the same thing. The underlying themes remain the same, and if we expand that and we look at things like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy, different psychological or modern psychology methods, they have underpinnings that we've seen in elements that are philosophical. Or if we look at if I look at things like self-determination theory, or if I look at things like the Harvard research study, or the Harvard, what is it? The longitudinal study by Harvard, where they looked since the 1930s to now. I forgot the name of it. My point is the common themes continuously emerge across these different disciplines or these different domains about essentially what it is that makes us human, or what is the essence of what it is that we need as humans. And I don't find these things very different. And I think that's really interesting to me. And then the thing that the question becomes to me is like, how do we put those into action? And that's where I feel like every time when we get these different concepts, for me, it's important to then map them out and say, okay, let's operationalize those. What does this actually look like? What's the how? How are these things connected? And then why do I want to do the things? And when I answer this question of why, one thought that I'm hung up on is saying this is really interesting, because when we talk about regeneration, when I think about like journaling, or I think about meditation, or I think about our body's ability to naturally restore ourselves is hardwired into our being. Like, let's think about that for a second. That's wild. Like, think about, like, you chop off like a salamander loses a tail, it can regenerate the tail, right? Through engagement in mindfulness practices, breathing, or those are the same things, could be prayer, mantra, anything that's present-minded focus that brings us towards ourselves can actually change our brain matter, right? Like, that's wild to think about. So I think we owe it to ourselves to be able to engage in these practices, because it is going to improve health span, it is going to improve lifespan, it is going to help shape our interactions in our day-to-day and allow us to move in whatever direction it is that we want. And I think for us as coaches, we work in a field that's very philosophical based. Like, you don't go to very many job interviews and the first question that you're asked is, what's your philosophy? So, okay, how does that philosophy work? What does it look like in action? How do you live it? And as I've gone through my career, the more ideas I've been exposed to, and the more ideas I've allowed myself to, or created space for, the more that I've been able to grow. And I think when I think about this model, it's tangible for me, because I suddenly realize in a different way the importance of understanding, or the importance of knowing, in order for our minds, our thoughts, or imagination to grow, we need ideas from other people. Like we have to seek it out. And there's one other caveat I have for that, but I think I'll come back to that and pause, because that was a lot right there.
That was a lot. I have many directions that I'd like to go, but I'll let you choose. If we want to talk more about brain matter, or again going back to the tail end of your model, talking about who you are. My question is there a leader who was or is like I don't want to double down on the worst of the use of the word model, but a role model, or there's a leader that you had in the past, or somebody that kind of like inspired you, or what, for better or for worse?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, role models and who we surround ourselves with are super important. Um, who's played a role in my life? I mean, I think there's so many instances that I can point to. I think stepping into the strength and conditioning field and starting at Lindenwood and being surrounded by all the awesome people that were, part of that GA cohort, both first and second year, shaped me profoundly. And I don't think I would have grown as much without the freedom that I've had there. And it took a collective, right? It takes someone giving you the space and the autonomy to operate and experiment, and then it takes enthusiastic coaches who want to engage in thought exchange. So I can point to everybody there who's had an impact on me, and then every step of the way at the Olympic Training Center, you start working with colleagues there, and I think that always continued along my career trajectory, that I've always had one or two people that have really educated me or shown me something about a problem that they see through their respective lens and or discipline that has helped me grow, both personally and professionally.
What do you think? What do you think your weakness, or I don't, not to make it sound negative, you could, what's your weakness, or what do you want to improve in yourself as a leader?
Mm, yeah, I'm get to specifics. I feel like sometimes I get so stuck on always wanting to improve and being probably very self-critical. So I'm almost thinking out loud here. I think something that I probably have to improve on as I think out loud is being a little bit more practicing some self-compassion,
Yeah.
because I think I I strive for, I don't know, I'd like to think that I don't. I mean, you strive for perfection, um, knowing that you're probably never going to get there, and that's okay. But it's that relentless pursuit that, I think can still be weighted pretty heavily, and that we don't. When I don't take time to be appreciative of my past self, I can be pretty hard on me. So, and I say this because I think a lot of people who are aspiring and want to be, in a leadership position and give to others and exert influence and have impact, also drive themselves really hard and hold themselves to a really hard standard. And it's this aspect of like self-compassion that we really forget about in terms of interactions with other people. I always think I can either be more patient or communicate myself in more of an assertive manner, um, being more empathetic, understanding. It's it's always trying to reach to those concepts. I think that I try and always try to improve upon, and then always try to reflect on interactions to see if I've done a good enough job.
Yeah.
And I think that's ongoing.
Yeah. Are you a perfectionist?
I've I don't know, but I certainly like things being pretty detailed and on point, right?
Yeah.
I think like for me it's like, and maybe this is a form of perfectionism, but I'm okay with not achieving or failing if I've known I've been able to put forth my best effort, right? And if I don't do that and I know that I left something in the tank, then that's hard for me.
Yeah. I think that's big. Um, I don't know. I wish I could recall where I got this from or what inspired me to think it. Uh, it's not that it's not that you're not making as much money as Jeff Bezos or that you're not as handsome as Brad Pitt or whatever. It's you're just uh, are you doing your best? And like that's what should let you sleep at night is if you're trying your best. Are you emptying the tank? And so that's something that's kind of like that's gotten in my head in the last couple of years here. Um, is just it's okay. Like it's okay that this is whatever I'm doing is not going to be world famous or $1 billion venture. Just try your best. That's a big one. I like that quite a bit. That's something. It helps me sleep at night, anyways. Um,
Yeah, for sure. And I think like accepting that our best is sometimes relative to the day. And like let's talk about this again in the frame of strength and conditioning, right? Auto regulation. We do it for a reason. Because we're not going to show up with a full tank every day. So our
oh,
80%
yeah,
each day is going to vary. And that holds true for other aspects of life, right? We can't expect ourselves to be living at a peak in every area. So you strive for excellence relative to the capacity that you have in the moment.
yeah. And that's like that perfectionism is when I was acting as a counselor, I was working in a play therapy facility for a little while, and that's what a lot of the kids we would see, mom and dad were perfectionists, and so they would just model that. But because they're like 7 or 5, a 7 and 5 year old are well, nobody does anything perfect, but 7 and 5 year olds are particularly uh, lacking. So,
Right.
but they would see one of their parents or maybe both of them would be a perfectionist, and so they would take that model on, and it would just like wreak havoc on their joy in their life. And then the same thing, whether they're little kids or college athletes, some of my best college athletes I've ever had are perfectionists. Like they have trouble sleeping at night because they are worried about the game the next day or the game the day before. Um, but they perseverate, and it actually it gives them it gives them like a skill set. It elevates their game, but it's not great for their mental health.
Yeah, it's like every strength has a tipping point, right? And that's always the thing is like where does the threshold of our drive exist? And when we exceed that drive, there what are the consequences? And I feel like that's what you're describing,
Yeah,
right? It's like
yeah,
so in order to be elite, we need this drive. It's actually what makes people elite. But what happens when that eliteness turns on you, right? And
yeah,
causes some sort of discord in some other area of your life, you know? And that's real. And something that certainly it's nice when you have professionals or the team around you, such as yourself if you're doing counseling, to help educate and be like, okay, how can we stay within our, you know, optimal zone of performance?
yeah. I got was taught a chunk of vocabulary. I don't know if it was, I don't know who made it up, but I learned it from Travis Pelletier, who is a little bit of a coworker for you now. And I actually got a podcast episode with him in pretty early on in my maybe like number 3 or number 4, something like that. But he said there's times to maximize things where you are a perfectionist, you're polishing it, you're making sure everything is just right. And there's times to satisfice things. So satisfice. So you just get it done, you know. And Teddy Roosevelt has a quote, or at least there's a quote attributed to him that says, "A thing is better done than perfect." And
100%.
that has guided me through a lot of like let's turn the computer off and be done for the night. But you know, there's that balancing act. You've spoken on balance once or twice already. So
Yeah, we're constantly negotiating, right? There's always negotiation going on, and sometimes we're just gonna have to accept that this is what it's gonna be,
yeah,
and that's okay. We can't do it all.
yeah. I like earlier when you were talking about what it was, different philosophies, different religions, things all sort of come to the same head and same conclusions. Um, have you seen anything on different cultures, different religions, and breath work or prayers and chants, and how all these different across the planet in different eras, people have come to the same conclusion, where they're saying a similar amount of words in a like a chant or a prayer, or some of the breath work in different cultures in on different continents, comes to a similar pace and rate. I believe it's like 6 breaths per minute, of so many seconds in and so many seconds out.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything and I also haven't been looking, I guess, in terms of anything as detailed as you're describing, right? Like word count, breath count. Um, but I think messaging is very similar.
Were you going with that a little bit?
Yeah, so when I hear like let's say in Stoicism they say you want to align with nature, this this ability to align with the natural world. And then you see that in the Tao Te Ching is there's references to nature be like water, right? Fluidity. So similar concepts like human nature, we like you said it earlier, you are what you repeatedly do. The world is the color of your thoughts. Um, and where I gravitate towards this is when someone says align with nature, this makes a lot of sense to me because we live in a world that's fast paced and we want instant results, but nothing in the natural world happens fast. So why do we expect ourselves? Like a tree takes hundreds of years to grow. So why do we think we're going to grow any faster than our human nature intends? And I think that's an unrealistic expectation for us. So learning by itself is a slow process. There's no shortcuts. If you want to learn, you're gonna have to put the time in. And everybody learns differently, and how that looks for somebody, you looks different for me, and it's okay. But the point is like we're both gonna have to put in effort. So I think to your point about these common themes, it's it's messaging, how to treat yourself, how to treat others, right? I think when we look at what are similarities, I think common themes are people need purpose, other people, nutrition, exercise, autonomy, like all of these things, depending on what theory or what it is that you're looking at, are the repeated themes that I guess, experienced or encountered within the resources that I've been exposed to.
With the population that you're working with now, is there a tier of most common issue that they're working on, whether it's physical, spiritual, relationships?
It's varied.
Even spread?
I can't. I don't think I can speak to that.
Yeah. Um, so if that's what your population is like, do you think that your population, obviously it's a more extreme setting, and how do you think that compares to the general population? What does the general population need to do? What's their weakness? Is it an even spread of, people, this many people need to start eating healthier, though that many people need to exercise more, this many people need to start uh, practicing more
Yeah,
self-care?
that's I don't know. It's also very hard for me to say, hey, what it is that I don't know. I guess when I think about it, like I feel very uncomfortable about being like, you need this, right? Like projecting onto something else what somebody else needs, the general
Yeah,
population. Like I don't know if I can speak to that. I would be making very broad assumptions about a large swath of people. But I think as human beings, I think we need connection. We need other people. We need to know what it is that we're doing and why. And we need to have, the freedom to express ourselves in an authentic way. And if we look at like the modern workplace, I heard it phrased again really well, is that in the spaces that we work, what we want to create environments where people are able to take risks and become self-directed learners and leaders. And how that manifests itself in the workplace or in life, that's autonomous. That's kind of what we want. And I think what we need is people. Now, I'm not an expert in this area, and I'm sure 100, people could probably give you a little bit more precision on, I don't know, human nature, and there's 1,000 theories out there. But again, I'm just speaking through my lens to try to answer the question that you posed without making too many general statements, if that makes sense.
yeah. That's something you said in there made me think about locus of control. Are you familiar with that?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's economy of control. It's like cognitive behavioral therapy and stuff. There's similar concepts, overlapping themes for sure.
yeah. Um, so yeah, the idea, some people believe their actions don't matter, that the world is going to go on the same way it always does, and nothing they do is important. And some people have the mindset of their actions have it's cause and effect. They get it, they understand, and there's a big correlation to who's happier and who's more successful and healthier, and to have an internal locus of control is pretty important. So, um, yeah,
Yeah, I like that. I mean, for me, it's like actions, attitude, and effort are the things that we have control over, right? Everything else probably secondary.
yeah. What do you think your future? We talked about this a little bit already with your education path, but what do you think your future looks like? But also the future of um, the care for military. It's changed 20 years since you were in it, since you were enlisted. 20 years later, it looks like this, and then what's it going to look like in another 20 years from now?
I think that's really difficult. Care for military. I don't know. There's so many changes going on within the DoD right now. It's really hard to tell where anything's going. I think we live in a time of tremendous uncertainty, complexity, chaos, and contradiction. So, and I would extend that far beyond just the military setting. I think that's the world that we live in. So, I think that's very difficult to say where it is that we're going to be. I do like to think I like Peter Attia's model, right? Healthcare 3.0. Like we need to be preventative. So caring for the whole person and taking preemptive steps towards, you know, deterioration, disease prevention. That's within our control as individuals. So my hope is that general like healthcare, whether within the military or general population, gravitates towards a more holistic preventative model versus a more reactive model that we currently live in. And I think all the tools are there. It's just obviously like with everything, there's systemic factors that play a huge role in creating barriers to move in that direction.
Yeah. Well, can we piggyback off of that? What's preventative? What's maybe like a shotgun approach if you're going to do one thing to help prevent issues for down the road? Do you have a top?
Exercise,
Yeah,
exercise. I really like it. Like, let's talk about well-being. Like in the documentary where Jonah Hill interviews his therapist, right? Stutz. His there. He talks about like you can always work on your life force. He has this pyramid. He's like life force is at the bottom. There's the relationships that you hold, and at the top of this pyramid you have yourself. And he's like, well, what do you do to work on your life force? And Dr. Stutz is like, you exercise. And Jonah Hill's like, really, exercise? He's like, how much does that account for in my happiness or my well-being, for example? And Stutz goes 85%. I was like, whoa, 85%. That's a very precise number. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it was really interesting because I was talking to a colleague of mine, and we ended up finding a meta-analysis that actually found just that. 2012 meta-analysis that said, exercise accounts for 85% of well-being. And I thought that was, first cool. But second, it makes a lot of sense. It's just like when we look at disease prevention, when you look at health effects, there's no pill that we can take that's going to have that's going to have a healthier impact on your mind and body than engaging in regular physical activity.
yeah.
So let's keep it simple.
Yeah,
Move well and move often.
nice. Little Gray Cook, Dr. Gray Cook, right?
There we go.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I you know, I got a few degrees, and I think it kind of institutionalized me a little bit. So like in my head, like that's what you do. You pick a subject and you learn a bunch about it, and then somebody gives you a piece of paper. But after I did that a few times, I was like, I don't need any more paper, but I still kind of like that model for learning. And so I kind of decided I'm gonna dive in real deep on this longevity stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want to spend some time with it. And it was kind of anticlimactic because the more I read, the more I listened to, the more I watched, everybody's just said exercise is this huge front runner for staying well longer. And I was just like, that's super convenient because I've already been working in the exercise field for
Right, play to
like
your strengths.
close to 20 years. But I did not intentionally pick something that was piggybacking off of my background. But it was kind of like it's kind of like a pleasant and almost humorous surprise. I was like, oh, okay, I'm already
Yeah.
I'm pretty well invested into this now. Yeah. Speaking of exercise, how's your exercise doing? Are you pursuing any goals lately?
No, no, I'm not pursuing any uh, particular training goals. I just want to be healthy, and that's it, really. Just feel good, feel strong, feel fit, feel awake, um, feel pain-free, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really what I'm focusing on. I think also, taking on a doctorate program is a huge shift in daily routines. So with that comes a lot of adjustments, and obviously that impacts the way that I've approached my training. So, you know, I think for the last 2 weeks when I had a real big paper due, I was just like, okay, like I don't have a lot of time. So I got to sit here and write a paper every 45 minutes to 60 minutes. I'm doing 10-minute intervals. Get on the kettlebell, do some squats, get on the bar. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So then all of a sudden, you write a paper for 4 hours. You got 40 minutes worth of work right there. Got my workout in.
Yeah.
And if
Nice.
that's what it looks like, that's what it looks like. Also, I read something cool about like, high intensity exercise, improves acute um, cognitive performance, right? So like you're able to focus because sometimes like lactate is used as brain fuel, so
Yeah.
it can help you focus. So and I actually found that to be true. I could actually really sit down and
Yeah.
I felt better at the concentration. So that's how I get my workout in these days when the time calls for it.
Yeah, probably spike some BDNF as well. Maybe grow some new neurons up in the old skull there. I remember having conversations in high school and with a buddy, and he's like, "Why do you think some of the best students in school are also some of the best athletes?" Like we had these like this crazy correlation from like our distance runners and academics. And there's just multiple athletes that were just elite in both. And it's just like there's something, you pump some blood up in that brain and watch it work a little bit better. And
For sure.
I've got a habit now where if I'm working and I'm at the computer and I just feel my brain slow down, instead of like working slowly and crunching through, I step away and I do like 1 minute of cardio, or I do like one set of like rotational band punches or something light just to move and get like a little stimulation. And it is such like it's like a hit of oxygen up to the brain.
Right.
I can go right back into my workflow. It's so much, and I'm so much more productive.
Yeah, well done. That's good discipline, man. That's good self-awareness. It's so hard to pull ourselves away from the things that we're working on, right? Thinking that if we just push through, we're going to get to our outcomes quicker.
Yeah.
When it's just like we got to take time to make time.
Yeah. I like that. Just made me think of you ever seen those old like hand pumps, like a well pump? Just like
yeah.
Apparently you would leave like a bottle of water by it, and I could be totally wrong. I've never done this in my life. But I think you leave like a bottle of water by it and you pour the water into it to help it flow back out. And so you just like you give a little bit and then you get a lot. So
right.
If I'm wrong on that, some people are just rolling their eyes like what a city boy what a city boy idiot that guy is. But yeah. What question have I not asked you that I should?
Ooh. I don't know, Mitch. That's a good question. I wish I had a good answer for you. I've enjoyed this conversation, so I figured there's a lot of good questions in there, and a lot of good ideas bounce back and forth. Maybe I'll have to reflect on that, and then I'll send you a text and be like, dude, you should ask me this.
Yeah, for sure. Send me a video. Send me a video answer and I'll just put it in. Yeah. Nice. Sweet. Well, always good talking to you.
Likewise, man. It's really
appreciate
good to catch up. I'm first of all, thanks for the invite. I hope this was worthwhile for you and your audience, and people got some good nuggets of information and some enjoyment out of our conversation. But it's always good to talk to you. And I just really appreciate you thinking of me, and it was great seeing you in Europe. And
Yeah, buddy.
Glad you're on your journey. So keep going, brother.
Thank you for listening to the Winning Wellness Podcast. Please keep in mind that all views expressed within the show are not a reflection of any universities or organizations that I may be affiliated with. If you have any questions or suggestions for future shows, please reach out through Instagram, where I can be found with the title name of Mitch Schwartzman.